June 7th. We're going to start with the budget proposal. Just remember, folks, that this is just an operational budget for the city for the next fiscal year. So I'm going to have Mr. Barthel go over it, and if there's any questions, if there's any questions, we'll just go one by one with everyone. Nobody emailed any that I know of, so I'm not sure what's going on, but I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank staff and the administrator, because I know it's a lot of work to put this together, and I'm guessing some accurate, but it's the best we can do at this time, so. Thank you, ladies, too.
Thank you.
Want to start with roll call?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you roll call, please?
Okay, Michael Platt,
Here.
Suzanne Souter. Here. Russ Smith,
Here.
Valerie Leary, Joseph Day.
Here.
Also present, William Barthel, City Administrator, Janet Carlin, City Treasurer, and Kathleen Wall, City Clerk.
Okay, a couple of things since we handed these out back in early May. You do have a new budget in front of you that we cleaned up today. On page 8 of the new budget, the tree commission, originally we were at 15,000. We brought that up to 19,500. If you want to just go to page 8.
Great.
There had been a request by the tree commission to, they were looking for 19.5, we had put in 15, so we were able to accommodate that. On page 15, I added 25,000 for a new phone system. Kim will tell you that the phone system we have is extremely antiquated. We get a lot of calls for people from the county, looking for people at the county, and the phone system, amongst other things, just we need a new phone system. So anyway, we put that in. That's on page 15. The number for that is 25,000.
Good to see you. What line, Bill?
It's the Capital Reserves Building, probably.
Yes.
Oh, it's in the Capital Reserve.
Yeah. It was 10. We added.
Oh, okay.
And then on page 17. Page 17, we had originally put in 10,000 for planning. I had a conversation with Gail Sites from planning, as I used to do, of course, with Mr. Baldini as well, and they're requesting 15,000. So we took that from 10 to 15. And then the only other change that we made were for the nonprofits, and you all have their requests. We originally put in 30. The requests that were or the numbers that were requested were 43,000. We originally put in 30,000, and we have since raised it up to the 43,000. It seems to be council's prerogative, right? And it seems to be council tends to want to give the full request, so we went ahead and just and in the conversation with Mr. Platt, I should say,
Okay.
went ahead and bumped that to 43,000.
And where's
What page is that, Kathy?
Well, it's under mayor and council contribution.
Right.
It's 11.
11.
Page 11.
Great.
Right, so those were the changes to what we had handed out, what seemed like a long time ago. So unless there's any questions for that, what I'll do is I just want to highlight some of the other things that we have in the budget, which obviously you've had enough time to look at it and probably identified this, but for the police, we have an additional officer in there, a traffic assignment car, which is a TAC officer. And that would be on page 4 of the new budget. We did list it under seasonals, but basically it would be your 19th officer. So we did put that in there.
Where's that?
Page 4.
There's no value to that line.
Hold on. Page 4.
Well, it's under
Salaries.
salaries for.
Oh, it's within the salaries. Oh,
Right,
okay,
Please
okay.
change the title. For
Right,
this
okay,
year, because
understood.
Until the audit's done, but once
Okay.
we create next year's, I'll change that. title.
Okay.
Right.
So this is salaries, spike patrol or
That was for the seasonal patrol.
seasonal? patrol?
Right, and as Kathy just said, that she left the line item the same at this point, but it will fall under, it's just gonna fall into personnel. But
Right,
that's what we're doing, we're identifying, obviously, there's a lot of concerns and there's been a lot of complaints about, and we've had a TAC guy years ago.
Yeah.
For those of you who've been around here for a while, and the chief and I, we talked about that, and he felt that this was a better way to do this, to add the 19th person if we can, as opposed to doing the seasonals.
Okay, what is it?
They do stop stop sign, people running stop signs, speeding.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
as I said, it's a traffic assignment car.
What does?
TAC, traffic assignment car, right?
Okay.
And does that include bikes?
No.
Because, I mean, I live on a one-way street and I
Mhm.
regularly see bikes.
Oh,
kind of
I thought you
going
meant,
up.
okay, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like a bike
No,
control.
no.
Okay, that's what I thought you were
No,
talking
no,
about.
sorry, I
Okay.
wasn't.
It would be anything, yes,
Yeah.
yes, it would be anything traffic related.
Okay, do you know, this is extraneous to budget, but do you know if they currently ticket or at least give warnings to bikes who don't follow the rules?
I don't know how often they are doing that. I know, obviously, you all have heard about a lot of complaints about various stop signs being run, one-way street violations, so I think they're more, I mean, I think they're probably more in tune to that type of a violation than they necessarily are with a bike. But I think this would also add to having, these additional capabilities. But it would really trickle down from stop signs, speeding, those types of things.
Well, bikes now are allowed to go through stop
Yes,
signs.
but they have to slow and be,
And look.
and be prepared to stop if necessary.
Right.
And some people do, and some people just blow through them without even slowing down.
Right.
And
Not denying that.
it's dangerous for pedestrians on foot, and it gives the rest of the bikers who follow the rules a bad name and makes people say, why do you want to give those bikers anything? Because they do all this bad
I
stuff.
don't- I got
So-
you. Where is that 43,000? I'm sorry.
That's 56 and it's paid for.
Oh,
No, you're talking about, wait, are you talking about the 43 for the nonprofit?
Yeah,
No, that was on page,
11, I think it's
11.
old.
11, but I don't see
Well,
it.
you know what? It's a different page on the old version than the new version.
we gave you a new version, it should be
I've
on.
got the new version. I'm looking at the-
Kathy, is that on the new version of the, 'cause I didn't put down that page number.
It's on page 10 of the
I don't
old,
have the new version in front of me.
under contributions made.
Oh,
in
no,
council.
I can, what,
It's on page 10, even of the new version. Contributions, mayor, council, 43,000.
Okay, yeah.
It's
there
the
it is.
There we
number
go.
is
There we go. Yeah,
7040.
yeah, yeah.
You got it?
All right.
So, okay, so I mentioned the TAC assignment.
well,
car.
excuse me,
I'm
Bill.
sorry.
Just one question, just so I'm clear on the TAC guy. It's just a regular police officer though, right?
Yeah, who
I
can
just
do
wanted to
other
make sure.
things. So if we're
Okay.
short guys, if we're short people, he can do other things. He's a.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a level below, like the big, like cops and all that.
No, no, he's gonna be-
He'll have the same training.
We're gonna
he'll
increase the
be-
force by one,
Yep.
but
I
his
got you.
job will basically be assigned like to traffics and things like that. But if somebody calls out sick, he'll be answering regular
We're
patrol.
addressing
Okay.
some of those issues.
I just wanted to-
Yeah.
A lot.
Right. And as I said, for those of you who've been around here for a long time, there was a gentleman years ago who was primarily a motorcycle officer, and he was well known for this type of assignment. And so the thought is to try to, yes, yes. So the thought is to try to bring that back again, because
He's a nice
you
guy.
guys have been hearing a lot of these complaints,
Mhm.
and it'll allow the chief to dedicate somebody to that. But to your point, that he's gonna be, or she's gonna be somebody who can do not just this, but this would be their primary assignment.
I've got it covered on Chestnut Street. My granddaughter has a My Little Kitty hairdryer, and I painted it black. And so I go out there every morning and evening and point that down Chestnut Street.
Okay. That working?
Yeah, some.
And then just the other thing, excuse me, in regard to the police, we are also getting 3 new additional cars. The chief's car needs to be replaced, and then we're gonna need a new TAC car, and then we're gonna need it, we have another vehicle. We're trying to get rid of all the Dodges and just upgrade.
Mhm.
So we're able to do that with this budget. There is $10,000 in here for GMB. If council decides you want to continue to go to the next step to the feasibility study for the municipal complex, that is in here. The trustees have indicated, excuse me, the possibility of us looking into the property across the street from here as part of the project or as part of the entire complex as another alternative. So if you're gonna look at that and we're gonna go that route, it's gonna be about $10,000 to put some sort of a design in place to address that.
Haven't we paid for one that we haven't seen yet?
No, you've seen pretty much what we've done. Yeah, now we're also in we had one more, I think, that we were ready to bring to council. So maybe to your point, that we had talked about. But then we kind of went in this direction. We kind of put everything on hold, primarily because of the fact that we'd been told that this was a possibility.
And I know it's been said over the years, but Goodwill's also interested in moving to that location. There's a possibility, I mean, rumor has it, let's put it that way, but they've been moving to where the old St. Francis used to be. They've been moving quite a
Here.
few places.
Yeah, there's that possibility.
Here,
Moving
years
here.
ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean,
Equivalent
I
pool, I
had
should say.
heard, I thought
Yeah.
from you, but maybe I'm wrong on that point, that there was some potential scaled down version of the complex. Is that what
That's,
this
well,
was?
there's the potential for, as you all know, the potential to purchase a property. In addition to now this opportunity with the trustees, and of course, we haven't worked out any specifics, obviously, other than they're interested in that. And yes, a scaled down version was something that I think that's kind of what Russ was alluding to. When we say scaled down, we'd have to bring that back and look at that pretty closely, but
And is that what this new study?
no, this would be part of doing something across the street, which would eliminate
under the water tower.
it, right, it would alleviate a lot of the having to buy another property. It would give us way more flexibility if that's what council decided to do. But like I said, I'm just bringing, at this point, the trustees have indicated that that's something they would, consider negotiating with us. And so in order to get to that next step, that you'd have to look at the feasibility of that.
Right, that would take the Wix project pretty much out of the whole thing,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
And what about the status of the current office building? Is there any change in that?
No, at this point, no, there is no, in what,
Well, there's been some rumors that there was a potential buyer,
oh, I don't know. I believe there may have been, yes. I
but
think,
not anymore.
I'm not 100% sure.
I
I really
know,
have not been having
that's not
those
a problem.
discussions. Well, and I also really haven't been having any of those discussions because I wasn't quite sure where you guys were going to be on this. I'm not sure. I believe there's still interest from perhaps another party in that. But as far as what might have been going on before and that had been discussed, I'm not sure if that's still a possibility.
Well, and I'm sure all of you have probably heard the same thing I have. There's a lot of grumbling in the population, and not just from the usual naysayers, that that's a lot of money to spend and perhaps it should be better spent elsewhere and so on and so forth. And
But the numbers are not right. I mean,
Well,
you're,
no,
you're
a lot
hearing
of-
10 million and we weren't even close to that.
well, the total was 10, but we'd be splitting it with MSC.
Well, that was an initial going back however many years ago when we started this. GMB had done an estimate. At the time, they indicated that, I think that they indicated to everybody that that was a very conservative high estimate. And I think it was agreed to, or inferred at least, that, okay, this is a number that's way out of proportion. And again, I can't speak for council, but if that were the number, I can certainly appreciate people saying, well, wait a minute, that's an extreme number. But we have never drilled down to a final number.
Oh, I know
I mean,
that.
there have been discussions about other things we possibly can do, like renovating this building and then building a smaller, or building another police station perhaps across it. You have to really decide on what other options are available to us. And that's what I'm saying. By this property coming available across the street, that provides other options to council. So I think that $10.5 million that was initially put out there has stuck in some people's minds as a definite. And of course, it hasn't even been,
So the only money that's in this budget towards a potential new complex is the
just the
10,000,
10,000 to
For
go to
another
the next
study.
step, to go to the next
which
step.
would also have to be approved.
Correct.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
correct.
and
That's correct.
This building over here, this is still out of consideration with the auto supply.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so nothing.
Nothing new is on that either. And then the other thing that's in here, just to let you know, is we have the Boothurst Road project. We did talk to Jeff about the need for that to do a complete mill and overlay. So we have a price from the folks who we're still waiting for them to start the project this year. I spoke to Jeff about that today, just as an update. We're hoping to get that started pretty soon, but we did get a number to do the mill and overlay in all of Boothurst, and that's $435,000. And that is in this budget. Okay, as your road projects for next year. which will-
Along with the rest of them. That's not gonna be the only road project, correct?
Well, the road projects that are in this year's budget haven't begun. yet.
Right.
So those will hopefully get done by the first quarter, is
Okay.
what we're hoping. These are other road, this would be your road
Second
project next
project,
year.
right,
For
okay.
the,
Right.
right, for the
Right.
new fiscal.
But I'm
year.
just saying, it's just not food service, there's other ones.
Well, no, for next year.
For next year,
it'd be boosters. It would be the entire community.
Okay,
And would that come under some of the state, I forget what they're called, it's the
We have,
transportation grants.
The CTF, the.
Yes.
Right now, we have 200,000 in the, coming out of the general fund, and we have 250,000 in the grant side for other road projects, I think. it's 50.
That haven't started yet this
Yes,
year.
and
The
then,
current year budget.
then we're also counting 250 for municipal street aid for next year.
That's
Okay.
right,
for next year.
Yes,
We're figuring,
For fiscal year 23,
right.
that whole 450,000 food first project would be 200 from general fund and 250 from
From
municipal
the
street.
state.
nice. Yeah, they needed it out there, I was up there the other day.
which, again, I think also would keep us in line with the projected, I know we've been through this, the state says ideally, if you're spending $1 million a year on the road, you're doing a good job, but all that I think is relevant to, okay, what roads are we talking about? What are them? So we've got roads that are 25 years old, but they're not getting the same use as other, right. So anyway, I think that keeps us in a good position as far as trying to stay within a $400,000 to $500,000 spend on roads each year. So I just, again, that is in this budget.
Okay.
And then just last to let you all know, excuse me, we wrote this budget without any consideration for ARPA funds. The thought we had was that this should be looked at completely separate from any ARPA money. You guys know we're pretty conservative with the way we write these things. We've had numerous conversations, and of course, the biggest concern right now is inflation. I mean, we've got numbers in here for gas, and that I'm very concerned are already
Every day.
but are already low estimate. And I think we've estimated pretty high. Now, of course, you do a mid-year budget review, and we've done that before. I would imagine council would want to do that again. But just so you guys understand, we came at this from a very conservative perspective. It does not include any ARPA money at this point. But I will tell you this in regard to ARPA, what we were able to determine was that we're in a position that because of the type of designation that we are, and I guess we're called an NEU, which is a non-entitlement unit of local government. So anything, the final ruling that the federal government had said that anybody who's receiving funds, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, less than $10 million who come under that heading, you basically can utilize that money. What we've done and what we're doing is we went back and we said, because we received the first half, as you know, of our ARPA money, and our second half should be coming up hopefully soon. What we were able to identify, go back and say, okay, during COVID, we spent X amount on salaries out of our general fund, and we're allowed to allocate that money toward those funds. So what I'm getting at is at some point when you have this discussion, there really are, you basically have that 2.93 million minus whatever we spent on, well, we got 50,000 for the economic development person and a few thousand, I think 11,000 for the attorney. So that other money can be designated pretty much, obviously, towards the government function, whatever. So that's the story on ARPA.
Has the city been reimbursed for everything we spent for COVID?
Well, you had different things. Initially, we had the
The CARES
CARES
money.
CARES, right, the
Okay.
CARES
The
money.
CARES money counted up until March of 2021.
Right,
Right.
And that, we put in all our expenses and we've gotten all that
So,
money.
right,
Yeah.
so basically COVID hasn't cost the city anything. I mean, we got reimbursed for most of it from the feds or the state.
But with this funding, it's anything from March
Okay.
2021 up until, and we had to do our first, because we're an NEU under a certain limit, we have to do an annual report. The first report was due April 30th.
Okay,
So what we did, because it qualified as the money we were receiving, we could categorize it. We had to choose which category we wanted to be in. And so we chose revenue replacement. And we were allowed to do that because of falling under that threshold. So then what I did was they said, can report expenses to date from March 2021 to March 2022.
okay,
So I put in personnel costs.
okay, so we're whole then, basically, from the ARPA funds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good, okay.
Yeah, and because that's non-recurring money, it doesn't make sense to do it for for normal
I
recurring
saw
expenses.
your email. I totally agree with you on that. I
And,
don't
you know,
know
so
how
if
you
there's
feel,
special
Joe.
things we
I'm
want
saying-
to do or extra things,
Yeah.
then that's,
You should use the money to do something that we normally wouldn't be
Yeah,
able to
you're
do.
Right.
right on when you.
Right, and honestly, we have an opportunity to do something. I mean, it's a lot of money. And said nickel diamond, we have an opportunity to do something grand, something nice, something somewhere. I mean, we should all be putting our thoughts into that, that's for sure. All right, any questions on the budget? Let's start with Suzanne, you want to go first,
let's
please?
see. On the, my notes are the old ones. so
Okay.
That messes up the patch
No,
of the
that's-
page numbers. Under the salaries for, public safety. It looks like it's up a bit, but we hired, we hired some new people, right? Does that cover them, or did we not hire? It went the amount, the actual amount for 22 was 751,474, and the requested is 1,018,000, which isn't that much. Well, it's 250.
2,000.
Yeah, because we had budgeted 964.
Yeah, but can
I'm
I,
just trying to figure out where
Well, the
that,
actual, the year isn't done
Updated.
yet.
right, I was just gonna say,
And the
that's,
budget is based on really the FOP contract.
year to date.
Yeah.
right.
Well, the
Oh,
FOP contract
so
is
the
basically
1,018,000 is based on the new
based on the contract and what we've
But not
already
an
agreed.
expansion in numbers.
No,
You mean
for what
person,
we did.
except for the tax. guy,
Except
which
for
is-
the tax.
That number
Well-
will slide over here, assuming it gets approved.
right, and there was an officer that was missing last year out of that budget because he was deployed.
Right.
And he is expected to be back in fiscal year
Right, okay.
23, so
Okay.
that's really the
But
change.
these numbers are all, these numbers are all dictated.
They're all dictated by the personnel budget, who they,
Okay, and on page 3, I noticed the range supplies went up from the actual spend was 6,800 and something to 11,000. Now, is that because I never remember the chief saying when they have new officers, they need more range supplies because they have some things they have to do to get their qualifications or something? Is that what that's about?
It's probably cost of supplies, because I think the
The
range.
cost of supplies has gone up. too.
well, and actually, you mean the 8,000 to 11,000.
Right,
Well, they had, they're having a hard time getting some of the things that they wanted to buy in this year, so they moved 3,000 from last year's budget that won't be spent.
Right.
oh,
Forward.
okay, okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of those supply chain things. I mean, ammo's getting
Yeah,
better.
they're
It's still
waiting,
hard to
they're
get.
having-
they're waiting 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And sometimes they could borrow from the county, but they're having problems too. I mean,
Right, so, okay.
But that's what that is.
All right, and this is a small amount, but on page 5, this is under public service again, the books and reference materials is more than doubling from 564 to 1,600. Is that again because of the new folks or? The last
Yeah, the
line
last
on
line on
page
number
5
five.
of the old,
I don't have the same number. What's the,
it's reference number 6110.
200?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
200, yes.
Okay. That includes, and this, we sat down with Jeff Bergstrom on this. Every couple of years, he has to buy an ICC manual that has a 3-year subscription that he has to pay for. And also there's like a zoning bulletin renewal that he said was last done a couple of years ago in 2020. So it needs to be done again.
Okay.
And if you look in 2020, we spent about almost 1,600.
And then, actually, on the next page, 261.75, the operating supplies, we had budgeted 4,000, we spent 7604, and we're again budgeting 4,000. I mean, if supplies have gone up, why didn't we raise that estimate?
What number, I'm sorry, where you are?
On
Yeah,
page 6
6175.
of the old version, operating supplies, it's 10,261.75. It's like
Oh,
the
here.
third line down. We budgeted 4,000, we spent 7604, and we're again budgeting 4,000. And if the supplies really went up that much, shouldn't we be budgeting more?
But I think we've overspent that line 4 years in a row.
Right, yeah, that's true.
I think that's a lot.
Is that like paper and copier or toner?
Hey, Valerie.
Yeah, operating supplies and public services. What was, I mean, we have 4,000, and you're saying, oh, because it was over.
Over.
It's been over for every year, so why don't we? I mean, it's not a lot of money, so it doesn't change that much, but
Did we have,
Are we
did
kidding
we have anything
ourselves?
in there? There had to have been something that came in that was, that I would suspect was unexpected.
Yeah, I'm looking. Each year, we've gone over and thought about raising it, and then there was always like a specific thing that ended up happening. Yeah, I believe that was operating supplies. I believe back in the beginning of this year, there were tires purchased that were booked to this account. That probably
Tires?
should, yes.
That don't book to the money.
Let's drop teacher, they all type situations. Yeah.
Well, then the year before, did we
Yeah.
have the same thing? Because we've got 6,500 there. And budgeting 4,000. So does that budgeted amount need to be?
I know we move things around as needed, and when the numbers are relatively small, it's not that
Well, I
significant.
think we have a new public works director, and we have a better handle now on how things are gonna be
Okay.
coded going forward, and we did sit down with him and make sure that this was feasible.
Right.
Okay,
But that 3,000 is not gonna make it.
No, it's not
Yeah,
that.
it's a good point.
but
Question.
further down that same page, temporary labor, we budgeted 3,500 and we spent 13,145. Now, I know we had some people out due to illness and you had to hire temporary replacements. Is that all that was?
And we also brought on somebody new in the meantime, so we're projecting the temporary labor number. But again, to your point, you're right. If somebody gets hurt, it's typically offset. The wage number would be offset because we're out using.
And well,
temporary
that's
labor.
true. We're not paying the wages because it comes under workers' comp, right?
Well,
They're
we come under
injured,
temporary labor.
Yeah.
Right.
the replacement. Okay.
Right, so that's coming out of public works budget on temporary labor.
So you feel comfortable.
And the next page, 7, the third from the bottom line, uniforms and maintenance. We spent 1,900. This year, we're budgeting 6,000.
What's your line item, please?
200, 7,200. So 3, 7,200.
7,200. Okay, yeah, what we did was,
New officers?
no, this is for public service.
Oh, right.
So what we're doing is we're implementing to Kathy, again, with our new director, he's indicated what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with a company that will actually provide us uniforms, cleaner, like clean uniforms, they'll clean them, different t-shirts, winter gear, that kind of thing. So we're trying to upgrade appearances and we're trying to provide better equipment, well, better clothing as well. That's part of the discussion.
Like a laundry service.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Now,
good.
whether,
makes
now,
sense.
we're looking at that, whether or not that happens, or we just do a better job of providing better, better equipment from a uniform perspective.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
Well, sure. Okay,
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we talked about that. We talked about that.
So that's.
Um, Maybe. it. That's it for me. Thank you.
You covered half of mine too, thank you.
I figured there might be something. Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Day,
sorry,
what-
one more on the income side. Page 21 of the old budget, it's line 10, 440-001 state court. This year we got 24,668 and we're budgeting 61,000.
That's for the increase in, if we have the tax.
Right.
The police officer, they
Ah.
expecting a revenue source from that.
Right. Now, we're not doing that to generate revenue. Let's make that clear. We're not writing tickets to generate revenue. But
But that,
by
More
having this
tickets,
person,
you
we
will.
will generate more revenue.
Okay.
Right.
Health person,
And
anything
that's
else?
it. Sorry, thank you.
How about we go to the other end of the table, Mr. Day?
Sure.
Pick your
Yes.
So yeah, I'll just do my line on. So I'm under 0101 and then 6105. I see we went from appropriating 1,000 to 3,500 for the professional development and travel, which I'm all for, but I didn't know if there was something special there.
Well,
See,
Joe, what page?
Page 2.
Page
First
2,
line.
first line.
actually, they're merging mandatory training, which ends in 7,400 on the next page.
Mhm.
They decided that those should be both in the same category, so we added that 2,000.
Gotcha. And I had a question on the next page, so that answered the next one. So you're just merging the two budgets?
Yes, they're gonna be the same line, but I can't delete that line in this fiscal year because it will mess up the audit.
Gotcha,
But next year, they will be the same line and both of those budgets will be together.
gotcha. In 0101 again, 6155, I see we went from 11,000 to 13,000 for maintenance contracts. What are the maintenance contracts for the police department? Just so I know. Yes.
001, 61,
55.
Fourth line down,
I'm
page
sorry.
2. Oh, 55.
You had those?
I don't really. They're just the numbers that,
That's fine. I was just curious, to be honest with you. Just trying to educate myself a little bit too.
But that's things like the maintenance contracts on the copiers and all that stuff.
actually, I have a note from last year's,
We have a maintenance contract for the HVAC.
yeah, and SUI for,
Oh, right.
and we have a maintenance contract on the generator, on the sprinkling system.
So that all has to be
TMI,
tested.
I'm not actually sure what that is.
I guess my question here is that low, I guess, covers a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not a bad number, it's just surprising. Bet you, I'm sorry.
They do keep on top of whether or not, Tina is constantly checking of whether we're getting good,
Okay.
bang for our buck. For what it costs, how many times did they come out, would it be better to just call them as needed?
Right.
She's always reevaluating.
On page 3, under medical testing, it's 80/20, it's the last line. It seems like we've spent a considerable amount, and then we kind of dropped off in 2022, and now we're budgeting 1,500. So did something change that it reduced our cost that much?
Yes. I believe this. So what we've done is, so I believe that's the mandatory physicals. And what we did with the new agreement, and at the chief's suggestion, we just basically said, so you still have your mandatory, you still have to have your mandatory physicals, and I believe that's what's falling under this. But because they have insurance, they get a mandatory physical, their insurance that we provide for them covers that cost.
Okay.
And then what we would basically agreed to was that anything, if there were co-pays that might come from that, then the city would cover those. So we've kind of put together a health program that encourages, working with your family doctor. And as opposed to just going to, a medical service.
We used to send them out to, I forget what.
Like
it
a
was.
mega or something?
Yeah,
and yeah,
sure,
yeah.
and have them do it separately, but now they just go under their insurance to the regular
Right.
physician, which knows them better anyway.
If I can
And that was-
interject there,
and we put that in, that was part of our agreement.
promotion ceremony here, the chief is actually talking about that. He was pretty excited about that.
Right.
Like you were saying, it's going to be a lot more interaction with medical professionals than just going in once a year.
Well, with their own
Doing
people.
height, weight.
Well, you
With
get
their own
somebody who
physician,
knows them
right,
and
so-
has their
Correct, so
history.
that's,
Right.
okay.
So
All right.
it's, with
More
someone, they get
efficient
their primary
and-
care physician,
Right,
they're gonna
correct.
get a better review, I would think.
So in line 8050, I believe last year we allocated 55,000 for the HVAC upgrades to this building. I think that's what we were talking about. Yes, so I see we incurred 22.2 in cost. Did that do the HVAC upgrades? Is it still in progress or?
Well, that part of that included the money we had actually received funds, if you recall, we had applied for money from the state And Senator Ford was able to get us money, so a lot of that money was allocated, though we allocated it. We did get the HVAC system fixed. Hopefully it's, you're right, we put a lot of money into it, but then we also had money coming.
We got-
from the
okay.
state.
Infiltration.
That helped us, correct, that helped us pay for that.
Understand. We talked about green supplies. So yeah, I could see why you would be concerned with motor fuel if we're already at that number now. It certainly doesn't seem like that's going to be dropping anytime soon. Yes, yes, Bill covered it in his original. Trying to remember all my notes. So I'm on page 5, and 6,006 is the last 4 digits. So for salaries, for public service, so we were at 326, and we go up 412, which is a positive 87. That's because we hired additional personnel, I'm assuming. It doesn't look like we've been at 412, well, at least in the last 5 years.
Under public service.
Oh, I'm
you're
sorry.
talking
I'm looking at my old one.
I know. Fourth line down, page 5.
It's 415 actually now. We were at 356. Or is that just the remainder of the year paying out? The
I mean,
difference?
are you talking the 356, 327, 62? That,
Yes,
like, well, that's the actual, and you still have another
okay. So
payroll
there's,
to go. Actually,
I
you have 2
understand
more
that.
payroll.
And we also lost a supervisor.
You lost
for
a
our
supervisor.
direct- No, but we didn't hire him until George was gone for a few months out of
From
that. as well.
December, yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So that would.
So we had-
That's a 40,000.
We had budgeted $360,090, and now we're 40, 50, 65,000 more.
We have an extra person, we have a
Okay.
director, and we had an increase. This is based on the union contract,
Okay.
which we just negotiated.
but I'm assuming the director is under the
The
supervision.
Correct,
director is
right.
up under
Okay.
supervision,
Okay.
but we did hire a person under
Another
severance,
person.
yeah.
Right.
Yep. And then I see under pension plan, same page, 3 up from the bottom. It looks like our pension costs have dropped.
The percentage that we have to contribute.
Because of a contract.
Well, no, the state sets it, and they
Oh, it
let us
just-
know in the spring what the projection is, and they projected to lower it a little bit.
Gotcha.
That's mandated by the state.
Yes.
Right.
It's about, it was like almost 7%, and it's now a little bit lower, 6.2
It is a little cool, yeah. You guys have jackets on.
of what we match.
Gotcha.
I mean, it wasn't-
So on page 6, under building repairs, it looks like we've outspent our budget at least a few years. And it looks like our average yearly is, is $12,000, and but we're budgeting 7,000.
Second from the end.
Page 6, second from the bottom, 8050.
The overage in fiscal year 22 was for 6,500 was for a new door
New door.
on the,
Right.
But we were over in 21 and 20 and 19. The only one we weren't over is 18.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. I mean, obviously, I'm not, it just seems like it's a recurring, that we're under budgeting that line item every year. So fuel and lubricants, it's obvious.
Yeah, but that new door was $6,500. Right.
So on page 7, under truck vehicle maintenance and repair. So it looks like last year we had must have had some significant repairs to the tune of almost 90,000. So was that like a one-off, or we replaced that piece,
They're
or?
garbage trucks, as you can imagine, and it is an ongoing problem. We've had more problems with our 2012, which until recently was our newest model. Of course, we bought a new model a couple of years ago, and we just had issues that just continuously, not just with that one, but then we also had some issues with the truck we got from Newark, as well as the other truck we've had. And what we're trying to do now is we've actually through the director, we're talking to people who can actually come into the yard and try to do some preventative maintenance if possible. But the problem with the garbage trucks is
A lot of moving parts,
a
yeah.
lot of moving parts, and they're not cheap fixes.
And I saw one that looked like it was having a problem right at Delaware. and
With the top was, yeah.
The other day.
Yeah, so fortunately, we've got, we made that trade. I don't know if you were on council then, Joe, but I think everybody else was when we made the trade with Newark.
Oh, for
Do you
that.
think we got a bad deal?
No, actually, I think we got a very good deal with it, but stuff happens,
Yeah.
No, I think for what we were, I thought it was a good trade, but again, these things wear out.
How much is a new garbage truck, Bill?
Just, what's on 280? About 280, and that was a few years ago.
We're
So
still
we're
paying
probably
more.
3.25 now or something like that.
Well, and I don't know what your actual expenses on the last one you're looking at. As of today, it's up to 95,785.
So is 41.5 conservative? Chair?
Well, what we look at it, again, we hope that, okay, these major things that we're correcting this year that popped up that we didn't anticipate, and through a somewhat, again, trying to do more of a preventative plan, we're hoping that it's good. But again, you could throw any number in there and expect for, a turbo, like the turbo to go or something like that. And
Well, the hydraulic
Right.
system.
so it's really, this is one of those numbers that is really it.
I'm not a car person or a truck person or anything like that, but is a turbo necessary? I mean, because you had medic vehicles that had the turbo engines in them, and that we just had more problems with them than anything else. So we don't buy those anymore.
Well, that's a good question for the next time we buy a garbage truck, because right now we got the one that has the turbo, and
Okay,
so.
well, I
But
didn't know.
it's a good
but
question. I mean, so we
That's what I'm
evaluated
saying.
it,
I
yeah.
don't know. I didn't see-
Right,
a medic truck is not equivalent to a
Right.
garbage truck, but nonetheless, lots of problems with turbos.
right,
We don't buy those anymore.
right.
So,
I mean, that's a good question.
So on page 8, on the first line, we're budgeting 10,000 this year. It looks like last year and the year before, we had some significant expenditures. I assume, I guess for one, that this is just minor repairs like potholes and that type of thing.
What is your,
What number?
number?
Street
Street
repairs
repairs.
coming.
we spent
Oh, I
less
see.
than that.
8120.
Right.
This year we budgeted 32, and we've already spent 5,500 so far. Well, as of May 13th, it's probably up a bit to spend, but
Well, last year, the 32,000 included 17,000 for the traffic light and the pole upgrade.
Oh.
Gotcha.
So those are cost avoidance.
That was our causes, right?
And a good cost
And
avoidance it was.
Actually, we budgeted first at the 49 in 2021, 49,000. That included it.
Okay.
Didn't happen. We carried that forward. So,
Right.
Gotcha. Understood. So same page under equipment parks 7060. Is that actually for like the sliding board and the swings and that stuff, or was it material put
It's
down?
primarily, I don't know if I mentioned this to everybody, but maybe we have a group that, I think I did mention this at the council meeting, that we have a group that comes in, the folks that we work with from the workers' comp program, who come in and we do safety programs, that kind of thing. Well, a couple of months ago in April, I would say every couple of years, they come in and they do a park evaluation. They look at the equipment. They say, okay, this chain, for example, could fail. You need to fix this or this. But primarily what it is, or what it was this year, was, okay, you need to do something with your ground cover.
Mhm.
And so every couple of years, we end up putting more money into ground cover chips, wood chips and
Wood
stuff
chips for the
for
playground.
these things, right? But they're not usually significant they're not usually significant replacements for sliding boards and that kind of thing, though it could be.
Mhm.
But we try to keep an eye on it from a liability perspective, obviously, to say, okay, and in fact, just so you guys are aware, we did that, they also come in and they evaluate for Battery Park as well, and we gave their recommendations to the trustees and said, here's the report, you guys should know about this. But pretty much, I think they found the same thing with them as primarily with ours, which are mostly the wood chips and stuff.
Okay, so ours are all those that are not in Battery Park. Is Dobbinsville the trustees or is that us?
Well, that's on there, but we maintain it. That was the agreement they made years ago. I don't know, whenever they put that in there. That we would maintain it.
So, Buttonwood and.
Correct.
Bull Hill
Model.
Van Dyke.
Right,
and Shawtown.
correct.
Is there a typo on this? Because the May 13th edition says 4,153.54, and this today says $473.
A typo in whit line.
Same one, 7060 Equipment Parks.
So say that again?
Okay, so looking at May 13th, it says we spent $4,823.54,
And it went down.
and then it went down to $473.54.
That's because we had paid for something fencing and marine electrical equipment on the pier, and then it was reimbursed by the Kalmar nickel. So we
Okay.
incurred the expense and then we sent them an invoice and they reimbursed.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Or is that the damage to the?
Joe?
Yep, we talked about the tree commission. So the handicap curb ramps line item on number 9, page 9. It looks like the last 3 years we've allocated 25,000. Doesn't look like we've expended any, and we're allocating 25,000 again this year. So how do we determine which ones and where they go?
Well, a
And
lot
if
of,
we're doing them?
well, so for example, when we did Delaware Street, a lot of those curbs were addressed through that project. So if we do these street projects that, where we're required, of course, when we do a certain project and it's a certain percentage of the road, we'll go ahead and that will be part of that project. We have put this money in here in case there are other times. In other words, if we find ourselves not addressing those curbs, then we've got these available to us to do something in that fiscal year. Right? We've been doing this now for, as you pointed out, for some time. We've made a lot of, we've made it a priority for a number of years now to try to get the entire city up to where it needs to be. I can't tell you what the percentage is at this point. I know a few years ago, I think the number Jeff gave me was like 70%. So we're gradually getting to a point where this number will no longer show up. But we think if we end up doing a project and there are no curbs, we should probably go ahead and try to do a couple if we can. And that's it. I mean, it's they gotta be done. So
Like
that's why,
insurance policy.
well, and it's also a federal law. So
And generally, what does 25,000 do? 2 of them
it
maybe?
depends on maybe a few.
Okay.
It depends on the condition of the road. It depends upon a lot of things. It's like when we do our catch basins, we say the average might be 3,000 to 5,000. There are times when it's more than that, not significantly more, but it's dependent upon the condition of, the street, the amount of actual work we end up having to do to get it into compliance, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine this can only do 2 or 3.
Yeah.
At the most.
But like I said, we try to parallel that to the other projects that we're doing.
Build it into a road project.
Right.
Right, that makes sense.
Great, great.
So same page, going down further, storm drainage and the MS4. So it looks like last year we were at 136,000 and we're at 95 this year. What changed there?
Where are you, MS4?
Yeah, so it's 7536 is the last 4 digits.
Was it the DEMA carryover?
Well, the DEMA, last year we had a FEMA match of 33,000, but we haven't finished that grant out. So we still have 20,000 left to match, and that was carried over. And I think we had 30,000 last year in catch basins, and this year we put in 25. We also had another 26,000 in the tide gate inspection in fiscal year 22, which was already accomplished, and we won't have to do that.
Okay.
So on the same page, when we go to advertising costs, it seems like our advertising costs dropped significantly this year. Is there, I assume that advertising is newspaper advertising, right?
Yeah, it's primarily the weekly, I would say, and anytime we have to we do advertise in the news journal for street bids. And for, we do Board of Adjustment in the news journal. Yeah, we do Board of Adjustment in the news journal, so it's kind of predicated on how many of those, Board of Adjustments we might have. That could increase the cost.
Gotcha. So you addressed that already. So yeah, maybe not like a budget per se item, but it seems like the Rivertown rides is scaling back every year or getting smaller and smaller. It may be time for us to reevaluate that $5,000, but I think that's probably a different meeting.
We remember too, I mean, like the last couple of years, you had COVID, people were we were just coming out of COVID last
Yeah.
October. So I mean, it just,
It just
I'm
seems
not
without
making
the-
an excuse, but it's
Yeah.
not as big as it was. I agree with you on
it just
that.
seems without the bike competition, it's
Yeah.
you know what I mean, it's a little different now.
Right. It's just a casual ride.
Yep. So on page 11, we have health, life, dental expenses. And it looks like we have increased the item significantly. And I was
Under
just wondering.
finance, FIN,
Mhm.
Page 11.
Yes,
third
under
from the
finance, I'm
bottom,
sorry.
yeah.
Yep,
6015.
Yes.
We've got a little bit.
yeah, last year we had a finance employee that did not participate in the health insurance, but she lost her husband's coverage.
so now
had
she
to
gets
go
this
on.
yours. Good, good. We talked about the office supplies, administrative expenses. For building repairs with administration, this isn't related to the budget, but didn't we put a new roof on that building recently? Wasn't it the last few years or something?
It was not, it was sometime, it had to have been 5 or 6 years. On the administration building?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that
Okay.
roof.
I know I was not here, but I
You were not
remember
on
reading
council.
about it, but for some reason,
I think-
Maybe that was 2018 when it was 30,000.
It was my first year.
You did?
maybe.
Yeah. probably did. And maybe that was HVAC or something.
I remember discussions about the HVAC and filtration. I don't
Okay,
remember.
maybe not.
It was some time ago that we
Maybe
did
not,
that.
maybe not the roof.
On page 14, the last line is actually contract reimbursements. What is that actually line items, just so I know for my own edification? It's a $3,000,
What's your number? What's the?
8096. Yeah.
Under
HR.
Under
HR.
HR.
Oh, that's, basically both the ASPE contract and the FOP contract, there are reimbursements for eyeglasses or education, continuing
Gotcha.
education, there's things that are contractual.
Yep.
That if they bring the receipt in, we pay
It's
them
in
out
their
of that.
contract.
So you never know who's gonna get what.
Yep. So on page 15, under town hall heat, I see we have 0. And was that prior to this, like contractual with the trustees, or just something that we agreed that we would pay, or?
I think it was something we just had agreed we would pay. And when it started, I don't know.
Got you.
Probably a long time ago.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say is, I mean, for their budget purposes, we want to tell them too, obviously, we're not paying you the monthly.
They know.
That's all.
So does that mean that we have abandoned the town hall?
We haven't been in there.
I know, but
But that's a decision.
has a
that's another
decision been made?
discussion for
has the
I guess.
council been made that
As
decision?
of, yeah, I mean, I don't think the trustees even know that's in there anymore. That's my understanding.
Well, we just never had a discussion and came to a conclusion.
Well, we can meet, well, let's stay with the budget, but we can discuss that later if you like. I'm happy to.
Okay,
So on the same page, the last line is porta potties for Battery Park. And it looks like we've allocated 2,000 each of the past year, couple years, and this year again, but it doesn't look like we've
I
expended
think-
that.
Well, we did in a couple of years because, just because of the cleaning and what have you, if you recall. And I think Linda
Oh, yeah.
put it in, and we just said, we're not gonna do that because of the maintenance for it. We're just not gonna click as a code. It was just way too.
But we still have one down in the parking lot down in South Dobbinsville. don't
That,
we?
that's the one that Del Dot's got.
Yeah, that's Del Dot's, right?
But this is one that we had put up, had agreed to put up there,
Right.
you know, so
Yeah.
maybe once the walkway is fixed and COVID's on the down low here, then maybe we need to look at putting it back.
Is that what it costs for a year?
I think it might have been for
I
a
think
couple, because
that's
we
for
also
two.
put a couple out at when the ships came in, we put them down there as well at the park.
I'm surprised. It just seemed low, that's all.
It's like 100, it's like 1,200, I think it's 120 a month or something. Which would be about 12, about 20.
But we don't have them there year round.
No,
Because
that's the other thing.
just in the peak seasons when people.
Okay.
are using them.
Right.
Got you. It looks like, so I'm on page 16 and it's 8130 is the last 4 digits. So for our workman's compensation, it looks like we're allocating 61. And we've,
Go ahead. You can, go ahead.
Actually, based on the personnel budget, our workers' comp should be increased, but we are getting a refund from DFID because they did really well. So we're expecting a check from them that will offset next year's
wow,
of 74,000.
From who?
nice.
DFID,
Our workers' comp program.
Okay,
Affiliate,
Right.
yeah, federal insurance trust that we do our workers' comp through.
very good.
So on page 17, it looks like we've significantly increased the architecture fees or the architect's fees for hack. Although it looks like we spent 10 this year anyway, but it looks like we're going to 14.5. Is there anything significant about that? Do we think that there's going to be more applications or
Or we just gave
or
her
is it
an
a special
increase.
project? Or maybe it was contractual increase.
Is that a contractual increase for Leila?
Match. Oh,
Page 17, last entry.
yeah.
Well, we seem to, HAC seems to be paying, I don't know if the contract changed, but they pay more for a consulting fee also. We pay the stipend to have an architect on there monthly. Then we included a CLG match and that we need to have for a grant that they applied for. And then there's also, we raised by 5,000 for consultation that they're now charging. And I don't know if it's because we used to deal with, and I'm just guessing, we used to deal with the architect directly and now we deal with the
No,
company. she works with.
she will go out and if she needs to talk to a resident about it, and there's costs associated with it.
It now goes to Tetra Tech and not directly to
She's
her.
just showing up at a meeting once a month. which is what
Gotcha.
stipends for.
Right.
And I was just curious. I just seen the difference and I didn't know if there was something I was missing or something in the project. I think that's the end of my questions. on that
Yeah,
side.
You covered my other half, thank you.
Okay, all right, we're not going into revenue.
Well, I figured we were just gonna do the income side and then,
I mean, expense.
we have two meetings scheduled, right? So I didn't wanna, or I'm sorry, the expense side and then the, income side after that, but.
My learned colleagues have covered this pretty well. So I don't think I have a whole lot. So, an old favorite, yard waste. Going back to there. Like it's page 7 on the old one is 0037106. And it's 25,000. Have we decided what it is we're going to do with yard waste and when we're going to do it? I thought we had kind of left some things still up in the air. Apparently, the actual was less than what we budgeted, and now, we're budgeting the same. Have we decided that whatever we're going to do is at that lower amount? Mike, I know you were involved in that discussion.
It's gonna stay the same, nothing's been changed from what I understand.
I think we lowered it. What number is that, Russ?
It's 25,000.
No. What is your,
71 and
Oh, sorry. So
We dropped it from 35 years ago to 25, that's where it's been.
What he's saying is we only spent 14 thus
Right.
far. So what is it that
Actually, it's up to 16,684 as of today.
16,000?
16,684.
Right, and it's gonna go up more now because you
For
haven't used
18
it.
tomorrow, yeah, there's another bill
Tomorrow
that's in
and-
the pipe.
So forth and so on.
Okay, so
it just seemed like a bunch of years ago, you did have the discussion and it was lowered, but there seemed to be, at least from my recall, significant pushback to lowering it too much is what I thought.
that's
So,
what-
right.
Well, we tried.
But then, but then we only spent 14, so did we do something?
Not,
Yeah, but
right.
we're still gonna have another
Right.
3 weeks.
Okay,
You'll most likely have 2 more bills.
Right.
One of them
Okay.
will come
Right.
in
okay,
in
just
July that will be.
thought we maybe had started doing something.
I mean, that's something I think we should look at our mid-year budget. And maybe not go out during the winter. Put a cap on it, maybe say August to October type thing.
That's the
And
kind of thing.
I mean, that's something, to look at mid-year once again, because in that way we can adjust our numbers there as far as that goes.
And if we had to actually, I mean, I would agree. I think, I definitely don't think there's reasons for us to do yard waste in February and March. Seems like it's futile, but if we had the monthly bills, you could evaluate the monthly bills of yard waste and then see which months are not productive.
All right, thought I'd bring it up. Okay, we probably covered this. Capital improvement road repairs. 0047540. 200,000.
What page?
9.
9 in the old one.
That's the food trucks.
That's why.
Oh, that's our contribution for Boothurst.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Boothurst. Okay. Good deal.
Yeah, the 200,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Right.
12 for me.
Contributions were
12 for you.
43.
Sorry, I didn't-
The economic development activity's got 50,000. That sort of looks like the economic development tourism person, but that's out of ARPA.
You still have to spend it. So we have
Still
to,
have to spend it.
yeah,
Okay,
we still have to allocate it.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry,
has to be
you
assigned.
still have to,
You have to put it on the
Yeah.
budget.
right, right.
It's-
You just
It's in
take the
there.
money in on the other end.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in as an expense, but it's also in the restricted carry forward.
There you go, okay. Okay. Oh, you guys are good. Mm, mm. Parties, workers' comp, contract, okay, folks,
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I'm done.
Councilperson Weir, anything?
People have really covered a lot. Probably not exactly for the budget, but certainly would like to have a discussion at a council meeting, or it may not even need to be there. But hearing from a lot of people, I'd really like to set specific dates that your Christmas, because people historically drag your Christmas, if you have a live one, drag your Christmas tree out and the trash trucks will pick it up coming around. But if we could just set specific dates, like this date and that maybe a week or two apart. And same for leaf pickup. And I know that that might change with the new director because it's typically always been when they had time. But maybe with the new director.
Not when they have time. I respectfully disagree.
Oh, okay.
What it, here, and unfortunately, leaves don't fall. And we've had these people who have said, why don't you set, you're gonna collect leaves out on such and such a street on such and such a time. And if the leaves haven't fallen, then we go out there and then 2 weeks later they fall, we're gonna get a call,
Why didn't you
excuse me,
pick up
from those people, why didn't you? But so it really is, and with the street sweeper and then the leaf pickup machine that we have, and with a new director, I think you're right. I think that all of those things combined, we would be able, we should be able to, but that does come up every year. People say, well, you didn't, why didn't you come down my street? So we do try to follow the leaf, we do try to follow the falling of the leaves.
It's like pound snow 2 days before it
So-
snows.
Right,
Right.
right.
Like Christmas trees, you could say.
Yeah, Christmas trees, we can do that, sure.
Could you bring the new director to the next council meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Say hi.
Yeah.
So just so I'm clear though, so how do I know when I rake my leaves to the curb?
You don't.
You don't, I mean, there's no way to schedule it. That's what.
So my issue really this year was my neighbor had somebody clean up her whole yard and drag all her leaves to the curb. It's really my yard, or, on the edge of my yard.
Mhm.
And then I don't think they were picking up leaves. This was just a couple weeks ago. So I ended up having to pick up all her leaves, and bagging them up and everything to get rid of them.
Mhm.
But I don't think she understood, that they weren't coming around to suck leaves up. So, and I don't know exactly when it happens either. So I guess that's really kind of the question is.
We start collecting
know?
leaves in early September.
Mhm,
Typically, the leaves that typically fall early are the ones on Sixth Street, for example,
mhm.
as you'll know. I mean,
Yeah.
they get
Yep.
killed there, starting in late August, early September. When we go around with the street sweeper, which we now have scheduled, we will pick up leaves. If they've got leaves out on the curb, that machine has been really, as I was saying, very, advantageous to us in that whole endeavor. But as far as trying to schedule times, I think.
Actually letting people know that on your scheduled street cleaning day,
Mhm.
they will also pick up leaves. That would be helpful, I would think, to many people, to at least have some idea. Because that's a regular once a month thing.
Right.
And so whenever the leaves come down,
Right. Now, the other thing is if people are bagging their leaves and like you said, at this point, I'm sure that your neighbor was just late in trying to get her yard clean.
Yeah.
But if they did that and they bagged them, then we pick them up when we pick up yard waste.
right.
So if you have, you've got the bags or you've got, in paper bags or the brown containers that we have or whatever.
Mhm.
And because we'll do that, if we have to push it, whatever, we'll bag them and then they get picked up during yard waste. So we've done that too.
I just, without cars being moved, and this is probably a point, and there's a whole solution to this that is convoluted. If the cars aren't moved, the street sweeper can't get to the leaves there. So it's we're kind of with the street sweeping program, we're not really doing anything to help the street sweeper.
Well,
Okay,
and
let's-
that's,
let's-
well,
let's stay on
actually,
budget. Let's
well,
stay on budget.
let me address if I may, Mr. Platt. So our guys have gone out, first of all, as you all know, except for maybe Joe, I don't know. A couple of years ago, okay, we had plans right before COVID hit. And we've got signs that we were ready to put up. And we said, we're not putting up the signs because of COVID. And we're not gonna put additional pressure on people. Well, it wasn't until just a few months ago that we got out of that other state of emergency. And I have had conversations with our chief because we have to enforce when we put these up, and with our public works guys. So what we said was, okay, let's get through the summer. We're basically back to square one,
Okay.
which is, we're publishing the schedule. We're expecting people to, kind of get acclimated to it. I'm hoping, assuming we don't have another pandemic, those signs will go up in this winter. And then we will start enforcing, through the police department, we'll start enforcing that. If you're parked here and it says no parking, you're gonna start getting tickets. But what I was gonna say was, the other thing that we have adapted to is this, where we can't actually get down because cars are there. Our guys have gone down with blowers. Now, is it every week on every street? Perhaps not, but they have gone down with blowers, and they'll go around the cars and blow the
Yeah,
leaves
I've
into
seen
the
them
street.
do
Now,
that, yeah.
that's happened primarily in the fall when we're getting the most, when we're having all the leaves fall. Excuse me, but that's kind of, but so we have done that. Now, hopefully, like I said, the plan is get the signs up this winter.
That
and
makes
start,
sense. That makes sense.
I don't know if it's feasible. I've seen the schedules in the newspaper. They're very small and hard to read.
Mhm.
And if you're like me, you take a schedule like that and you stick it up on your refrigerator or hang it up somewhere to remind you. Is it possible to print one on a standard 8x11 sheet and send it out with the utility bill so that people have something that's more readable than the little small thing that's in the newspaper?
Yeah, we could
I
do
mean,
that.
they don't have to do it
Sure.
once because then people would have it.
Well, I will tell you also this.
When you're getting closer to starting it.
No, and that's a good call, but also when we were doing the street sweeping early on, and the police went out and were writing warnings, because that was our first brush at it, they also put schedules in with the warning.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, listen, the better we can get the word out, and certainly we can put it in in the utility, in the crier, we can do that.
We're on that calendar. I swear by that calendar. I don't know when the trash man's coming or the recycling's coming. I always look at the calendar.
Right.
Calendar's worth it.
Except it's more
My first
detailed
year, I
because
said that's
it's
canceled.
these streets on this day and
Right.
other streets on other days. It's more
Right.
complex
all the
than
time.
just trash pickup. But
That makes sense. So thank you for that.
All right, folks, we've pretty much covered expenses. I have nothing. Everything that I had checked off in the last 2 weeks was covered. Is there any questions about expense or income?
Are we moving on to income then?
Yeah, well, if we wrap it up tonight, yeah, we're all in agreement on expenses right now, so if we can wrap it up, we can wrap it up.
Page 20, I guess.
Yeah.
Hold on. We did really well last year. I do know that the market went, and so we received a lot of property tax transfers and stuff like that. The market, I think, certainly, I think, I could be wrong, it may kind of be leveling out a little bit, but not that much. I know that, I know a couple of people want to buy houses here and they're just not really available, under tax penalties, just based upon since 2018 to 22, I think we could safely increase that by 5,000. Under property tax transfers, I think we could safely, and it might even be more, but like I said, safely increase that by 50.
Based on what?
Looking at the law of averages of since 2018.
Yeah, but your interest rates have gone up 3 points in the
That's why I
last 3
said
months, so.
safely.
This is pretty conservative as is. I
It
mean,
is
I
conservative.
mean, you're guessing, you're not real estate. I'm just
Well,
saying.
you're not
I'm going-
either, so,
going-
you know, yes, it has gone up, but in 2018, they weren't necessarily low. Interest rates.
Interest rates were, yes, they were.
Even with the more conservative estimates for income, we've already increased the contributions to what was requested by each of our nonprofits. Maybe Bill said that before you got here, I don't remember. But that's one of the things that's been changed.
Uh-huh. I
And
saw it on
so
the budget.
what's the point of increasing the revenue estimates if we don't need it to offset an expenditure? We've got a balanced budget based on the more conservative income estimates.
Is that all we're doing here, a mathematical exercise to balance this piece with this piece, or are we trying to get an honest estimate of what income?
Well, I
There's
think-
other things there's probably other things we could do throughout this next year, and rather than go back and have to work the numbers to, rob Peter to pay Paul, or, oh, look, we have 50,000 extra here, put it in here now, so you have the funds, or you can estimate that you're gonna have the funds to be able to do things.
I disagree.
And
with
if
that
we
because-
don't use it, and if we don't do these things, then there's no,
Well,
And, you know,
then
there's-
all you're doing is increasing something because you're putting it on numbers because you want to spend that money in the future. That's why we have the mid-year budget meeting. And it worked well last year. You're just gonna say, raise it by 50,000 so I can spend it over here.
I don't
We
even
just-
have,
We just went through expenses.
I
We've met our
understand, I
expenses. We
understand
have
how
a
it
balanced
works.
budget. That is the whole purpose. of
Yes, it's a
these meetings.
numerical exercise. I think what I'd like to
Correct.
try to do is put a little bit of extra money in there so we can have some vision on
Well,
things. Do we
you're
need-
making this money up is what I'm saying.
I'm not,
You're saying, let's just increase this because of property taxes.
Hey,
You're making the money up.
stop it.
No, you're making the
Quit
money up.
yelling.
I can do what I want. I'm not yelling. You're just making the money up. You are just
I am
making money
looking,
up.
I am looking at the funds that have come in.
Last year,
since
interest rate-
2018 through 2022, excuse me. And I think 5,000 is a moderate increase that we could have so that we can look at other things like signage, or there's a lot of other things that we could look at, and I don't have all list in my head right now.
If you look at
You had too much to prepare.
you look at tax penalties, and the smallest number is 38,000, and we all of a sudden drop to 20.
Well, because they've been collecting, they've been working, they've been working extremely hard in collecting these monies and getting the back taxes paid. So the money's just not out there now.
I will,
Well, it's the lowest was $26,745 over the last 5 years. I'm not even trying to go over that.
are you saying add 5,000 to the 20,000 that's there, or
Yes,
add
ma'am.
5,000 to the 15 from this year?
No, 5,000 to the 20 for 2023.
I will explain that tax penalties, basically, you don't have that many that are due, and the reason we collected so well is all because of munitions. Forcing properties to munition that had big past due balances, they had large tax penalties also owed. So eventually, that is dropping off, and as far as the books are concerned, as of today, there's only 25,000 collectible due in tax penalties.
And if you
Total,
look
so
at-
we
if
have
you
to
look at
collect
the
them
number,
all.
You can see how it's been descent, so 68, 49, 40. And yeah, you're right, we've been conservative about our estimate, but we kind of feel like we kind of wrung that rag a little bit, but.
But there's only 25 out there. There's
So
only
what'll
25
happen, so
out
see
there.
what happens with the delinquencies too, is then they will eventually start to accumulate again.
Right.
So you'll start to, now we'll get people that are 6 months, a year, 2, and then that number will start to go up again, probably in a few, right. Right, because we're not taking people to munition sales.
If they're,
per-
if they owe a couple $1,000,
Right.
but once they get up to a certain point, then we push it to munitions.
And if I also just made, Mr. Platt, if I may just make a comment on where we are with our estimates on transfer tax. And I know through the years, we've been very conservative on that as well, based on the housing market, that type of thing. And Valerie, I don't think you were here, but as we said, I said initially, we are very concerned about you know, the situation as I think everybody is with inflation. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, interest rates are going up. It's a weird market. A lot of the additional monies we seem to receive every year, thank God, in some regard, is things that are significant in terms of the actual properties that are big ticket item properties that are selling. You know, so in that regard, I think we've been very fortunate. But that, you know, again, we basically looked at it and said, all right, with inflation and with interest rates going where they're going, we're pretty conservative in that number.
So I will tell you that, I mean, I agree with what we had talked about on the income side. And obviously, a lot of this is new education for me. But I'll also say that, you know, we received this budget book and really we can question and this and that. But, you know, when it comes to what's in here and the long range plan, like, we do feel like, you know what I mean, we need to have some input to what's going on. So with saying that, without the money, we're not doing anything. So I don't disagree with Valerie. I think the property transfers, theoretically, you could go to 250. I can see inflation coming, but I also don't see the market cooling off that fast. But what I'll say is, of that 50,000, yeah, I have ideas that I would want to do for it. And we talked about this complex, and Bill, we had talked about it, being used specifically about the complex. And instead of piecemeal on this complex, if we want to do this complex, let's pay somebody to do a study for all the possible spots in the city of Newcastle that we could do this complex. So instead of 10,000, maybe it's 25,000. But that's the type of things that I think this council needs to look at, so we can plan ahead and do the right thing for the, you know what I mean, for the council overall. And that would be my reason why I would want to see some increases in the budgets. The
Then let's raise
long-term
taxes.
stuff.
That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee that let's raise taxes. And we
That
can
we
say
don't
we're gonna
need to
bring
raise
X amount of
taxes.
dollars. We're not guessing at that point.
Well, I don't think I'm guessing. I'm looking at past history. And I see what the past history is.
Yep.
And I see the surpluses that we've had.
But, okay, when we look at past history, Mr. Barthel just said that. The Garrison sold for 15 million. That was almost what, 780,000?
But you could make excuses for every
I'm
year.
not
Mike.
making excuses. They're facts.
You're right. And the
They're
fact
facts.
is, what we've been collecting is way over what we've been budgeting, period. That's the fact.
And that's why we have balanced budgets. That's where our reviews for the city comes in. That's why our city's financially stable. There's gonna be a time where this stops.
Like, I don't know
And
what your
I-
argument it is. Let's not accurately budget. Is that what your argument is?
Wait, no, my argument is we have staff sitting here who's been working on this for the last 2 months. These are the people that do it every single day.
So we shouldn't have any input.
We're just saying,
Yeah, if
we
we
think,
don't have any input, why are we here?
no, we do have them. All I'm saying is you can make these numbers up, go for it. Go for it.
I don't think we're making them up.
You are.
Again,
Their
we,
estimate,
we are-
They're making them up. If you, Ms. Carmen,
me, can I
Ms. Carmen,
speak?
correct me if I'm wrong. These are educated guesses based on statistical data, basically.
well, then we,
Okay.
just as we had an explanation, let's have explanations about why they are where. That's all anybody's asking
Right.
for. Okay, if you know, if this is 20,000, why is it 20,000? 200,000, why is it 200,000?
And they've explained it.
I think on the.
So we don't trust their decision.
No,
Now, you're taking this down a whole nother road.
No,
Like,
I'm not.
if we don't sit here and have any
No.
input in the budget, really, there's no sense in meeting. And the fact is, the people have elected us to look at the budget and then lay down the plans for the long term for the
We
for the city,
questioned a lot of
period.
it. That's a lot of expenditures, and it wasn't meant to insult anybody, and we got some very good answers. Why can't we do the same
By
thing?
the
with
way, just make up the numbers.
Why can't we do the same thing with revenue?
Go ahead, continue.
all right, so I'm still standing by, there was a third increase here, and I'm gonna put it out on the table. So it was 5K at tax penalties. Now, you did say there's only 25K in taxable properties right now. Okay, so, and you don't collect all of that generally anyways, it kind of, because people don't always pay that. Okay, so, all right,
Like if somebody's typically behind and not paying for years and years,
Right.
they don't all of a sudden come and pay.
right, if
They
they didn't
end up
have,
paying,
right,
right.
right, so I make a note here that you're saying there's only 25,000 in taxable potential tax penalties. Okay, And there's no more than that. There's no whatever. And then, so moving on down to property tax transfers and just looking at the lowest number in the last 5 years, it's 259, and I still stand by increasing it by 50,000. And the same thing applying to, excuse me, building and hack applications. I was gonna say 50,000 there as well, but I might lower that a little bit because, yeah, inflation with the cost of product for people to do things, you know, so, you know, maybe drop that down to 30 and I think we'd still be safe. But that, that's building hack applications 0003. And it's 70,000, and every year we've gone over, and the lowest was 108. So if you added the pot, you know, you'd bring that to 100. And like I said, this is, you know, let's like Joe said, there's things that we might like to do, you know, study, you know, look at everywhere else in the city. I want to assume that, say, if we have an expert come in for town hall, that money is coming out of ARPA funding, like if to do a study on that or do any renovations to it, will that come out of ARPA funding?
That would have to be approved by council.
Oh, but approved by council, but ARPA funding is not in here. Okay, so that's something. The impact fees. So on impact fees, Riverbend, is that for the 30,000? It is on page 21. Is that, just to remind me what that is that for those houses that are going to be selling this year? Because, okay, thank you.
We have to pay goodwill out of that also, correct?
Yes, there is an expense line for impact fees to goodwill.
I think that was all. It was all basically on the first page there under property tax, not property tax, excuse me, tax penalties, which I understand the concern there, property tax transfers and building/hack applications.
So if we raise those two, that would be 50,000 plus 30,000. That's an extra $80,000 on the revenue side. Are you suggesting that we make additional proposals for expenditures tonight, or just leave that money in the budget as cushion or to be determined?
Could that be added? And this is what my 5th or 6th year doing it, but could this be added for unrestricted? Could it be added to unrestricted?
You mean an expense line?
Yes.
Because the budget would balance.
Well, if you add it to unrestricted, okay, so hang on. I was thinking backwards, pardon me. So isn't there, yeah, sorry, my bad on that one. Is there somewhere else that can be stowed over here under expenses?
Is there a problem if we just produce a budget that shows expenditures, income exceeding
You
expenditure?
have to have a balance.
You have to be bound. I know you can't produce a deficit budget, but you can't produce one with a surplus either.
No.
So if we leave it the way it is, and then between now and midway through the year, we come up with some ideas for things that we could, projects that we would like to do. And if the revenues are tracking as we expect they will, at a higher level, we can then pass an amended budget to add those expenditures and those budget projection or income projections.
Yes, right now, if you say you increase your revenue by 70,000 and you put in a budget line of 70,000, there's no mechanism in place that won't let you post to that budget line if you don't get that revenue. So you could come at the 6-month part and realize, oh, I've spent the 70,000 and I actually never collected it. So there's no mechanism for this line goes against this line. It's all your revenues and it's all your expenses.
And
So that's the worry in that. There's no mechanism to make sure something doesn't get spent
You
unless.
just
it's-
can't produce a cushion. You have to have an expenditure to offset it.
Right, but
And-
like you said, at the 6-month point, if your revenues are up and they're actual revenues,
And in fact,
then you
if
can create an
4
expense
months from
line.
now, in September or
Exactly.
October,
You could do that
we
at any
come up
point.
with it would be wonderful if we did X, we could revisit the budget at that point.
Which they
And
did that,
and amend the
We did that last
income
October.
and they
projections.
did that a
And
year when they got a $400,000 transfer tax in one fell swoop.
Right.
The next council meeting, they made a motion to put that money towards a certain expense.
Right.
Like they put it away for Delaware.
That was a few
That
years
went to
ago.
Delaware.
Yeah,
So-
that went to Delaware.
So we can't, I mean, and it doesn't make any sense now to try to come up with something just for
No.
the sake of coming up with
Right,
something to
right.
spend it on. But that doesn't mean we can't if an idea comes up.
Okay,
Correct.
something
I-
that would be
right, so-
beneficial.
Correct.
Yeah, the only problem too is at the 6-month point, if you're going by, and you're doing another budget review and your revenues are up in a line, that doesn't necessarily mean that in 12 months, they're going to continue to.
No,
Something could be, you could have a budget review in January and then February, the bottom could fall.
well, sure, but that could happen tomorrow. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Could
that
happen
could
in
happen.
there's a
month.
certain
Could
amount
happen
of,
at any time.
Right.
you're basing it on past history
Right,
and
you
you
would
don't
get
really
an
have
idea.
anything else to go on.
Right.
Right. I mean, it balances on paper and I understand that. I don't think we get to the end of every year and every expense met exactly what it was and every income met exactly what was projected. So, I think that we've always had a little overage and so we're keeping that in mind. I understand what.
Right, and I understand the point of, we don't want to just manipulate the numbers on paper, and we don't want to just produce a balanced budget for the sake of a balanced budget. We want to dream or project things that we think we could do that would benefit the city, but we haven't come up with those things yet. And so to manufacture the income by changing those numbers tonight doesn't produce anything, doesn't bring about any benefit. Is that accurate?
And to say we don't dream in things, I mean, the budget is constantly evolving. I mean, we talk about these things. That's what we have meetings for, and that's where money gets spent. And we do that. We buy cars every year. We try to do different things with it. And that's why we had, like I said, last year we did October and we did February budget meetings, just to see where we're at, where we are.
Right,
But
and that'll-
Miss Carlin every month gives us exactly where we're at.
And that would give us a clearer sense by, our fuel costs gonna stay where they are they gonna drop?
Correct.
Because that would make a big difference. So 4 to 6 months from now, that picture could look very different than it does today.
But to repeat myself from many times, we never do any real planning. We never go back to the comp plan and say, what does the comp plan say we need to do in this year? And how much is that going to cost? And do we need to raise taxes to get there? This is just a balancing exercise.
Right, and
It's
for-
not a,
And
it's not a planning exercise. We don't, in this town, we do zero planning.
And we have a commission the Sea Level Rise Task Force, which next year is going to be bringing some recommendations. And those things are not going to be inexpensive. And I think we need to start thinking about maybe if we have excess revenue, setting some aside towards those expenses that we're going to have to incur. Yes, we may get grants from FEMA and DEMA and all that, but I don't think they're going to cover all of it. They're going to expect us to pay some too.
They'll expect us to pay some, but we're not
But if
We're
it
not in
costs-
any way, shape or form, even over the years, able to cover it, period.
No, but if it's
Yeah,
10 to 15 million,
yeah,
and we get maybe 8 to 10 in grant, or, all but $1 million or 2 in grants, that's the majority of it, but we're still gonna have to come up with some. And I think we need to build that into our planning. And not, and maybe there are other things that would be nice to have, but I think protecting the city from sea level rise is a must-have. And I think we need to balance that.
well, and a couple other things that were discussed, and I didn't see it in here, and the mayor had really stressed it, was a grant writer, so we can get monies that are out there at the national, I think he said the federal level or whatever, and
State level, I think.
state, is it state level? Okay, I thought it was federal, state and or federal, and, we didn't, is that something we need to put on the agenda, if not for the June meeting, a July meeting, and how much does a grant writer cost? And, so.
Well, can a grant writer be hired on a contract basis? I know people who have done.
I
that
don't-
work
I
on a
don't know.
Contract basis.
Yeah, they
They're not a
do.
staff position.
Yeah.
But
You're
they're-
not allowed, to use the grant money to pay that person.
Right, no, I'm not talking about
No,
staff
but-
person, but you gotta have the
But
money.
you can
a contract,
contract
yes.
with this person to find grants for X project, write the proposal.
Yeah,
And
Exactly.
maybe they get X dollars for doing that and they get a bonus if we get the grant. I don't know how that
They
works.
can't get those. But you know something, the trust was gonna give us 10,000 beginning of the year, and they thought it was so convoluted that they backed out of
10,000 for what?
it, a grant writer.
Oh,
So there was 40.
They said-
Was it 40? Yeah, I
So
thought
we-
that, maybe I'm wrong. I know they were offering us some money, but they said the process was so convoluted that they backed out.
what process? The grant
Of
writer.
hiring a grant writer, trying to
That's,
market.
well, I don't, I think they were referring to something else, which we wound up picking up on our own, because I talked to Mr. Toner about it, so. But I think a grant writer may cost you more than 40,000, actually.
Well,
Grant writers, good grant writers are, you can hire them on a contract, like you said, but I think good grant writers are not cheap. And
No, I
going-
didn't say
Yeah,
they.
No, I know, but I'm fine with what you're saying, but we need to, I don't know that the city has ever had a grant writer.
I can tell you
And,
they have not.
okay, all right, so, and I don't know where to go under a rock to look for one either. So I can,
Google.
well, I know a couple people who were writing grants for other stuff a long time ago, that maybe I could email them and ask them, where do you suggest we go look for these? I don't
Well, and
know.
the
Bill,
other
do you have
thing
any
is-
idea?
You have to know what grant you're going to be trying to get before you hire your grant writer, and how do you find out about those grants?
That's what Mike Mithamayer was saying, is you're hiring someone to go after it and find it. And if he's suggesting this, maybe we engage him in that conversation as well, going, hey, do you have a list of what might be available? And, do you have any ideas for a grant writer? I don't know.
Can we
Grants-
defer that conversation
right.
until later and maybe agree to pass a balanced budget and that we will revisit in October? Everybody pinky swear.
Is that a motion?
Can we do that in the budget meeting? Pinky swear that we revisit this at the beginning of October.
Okay, is that a motion to approve the budget?
That's an emotion to approve the
That's a
budget.
term, a technical term.
It's all
You
felt.
wanna
It's all
approve it or you
felt.
wanna talk about it?
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve the budget. Do I have a second?
Don't you approve the resolution?
I'm sorry, you're right. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2022-16?
You need to read what the numbers are. I've written the numbers in pencil, just so that for reading purposes.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Resolution 2022-16, setting the fiscal year 2023 tax rate and adopting fiscal year 2023 general fund budget with the fiscal year 2023 grant budget for the city of Newcastle. Whereas the city administrator has presented a proposed fiscal budget for fiscal year 2023 general funds and grant budget to city council members, the mayor, the treasurer, and whereas the mayor and city council members have advertised and held a public meeting to discuss and make appropriate changes to the budget. And whereas the fiscal year 2023 general budget balance is $5,457,036, $360,000. And whereas the fiscal budget of 2023 grant budget is $1,363,200. And whereas the general budget and the grant budget are to be managed by the city administrator. Now, therefore, It is hereby resolved that the fiscal year 2023, the city of Newcastle has adopted at $6,820,506, and resulting tax shall be set at $1.20 per hundred of assessed value, reflecting a zero tax increase from the current fiscal year to the new fiscal year, commencing on July 1st, 2022. All in favor of resolution 2021-16?
Aye.
Ayes have it, you have a balanced budget. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
staff. Appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Always fun.
This is a record. I can attest to that.
It's your hard work that really played
Right.
into it. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Very much.
I'm gonna sit.
can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll go from there.
And we'll have the typed up version of the resolution ready for signatures. tomorrow.
Can you pass that back there, please?
Never-